I sit across from the new CTO, Derek Hamilton, in the glass-walled conference room at TechFlow Solutions. He slides a termination letter across the mahogany table with a smirk. "We own your code, sweetheart." He laughs, dismissing 3 years of my groundbreaking artificial intelligence software development. I reach into my briefcase and place a manila folder before him. "Actually read paragraph 6, I say calmly. Derek opens the folder, reads, and his face drains of color. He slowly turns to CEO Bradley Morrison. "Sir, she doesn't work here anymore, but..." 3 years ago, walking into TechFlow Solutions for my first day felt like stepping into my future. The gleaming office in downtown Seattle buzzed with innovation, and I knew this place would become the launching pad for my career-defining work. My name is Paulette, and at 28, I carried a computer science degree from Stanford, 2 years of machine learning experience at Google, and a vision that would transform how businesses process data. Amanda Chen, the original Chief Technology Officer, greeted me with genuine enthusiasm during my interview process. Unlike the sterile corporate interviews I had endured elsewhere, Amanda understood my passion for artificial intelligence and autonomous data processing. She listened intently as I described my theoretical framework for creating adaptive algorithms that could learn and evolve independently. "Your background is impressive," Amanda said, reviewing my portfolio of algorithm designs. "But what excites me most is your forward-thinking approach. We need someone who can build the foundation for our next decade of growth." CEO Jonathan Walsh shared Amanda's vision. During our final meeting, he leaned forward across his desk, eyes bright with possibility. "Paulette, we want to give you complete creative freedom. Build something revolutionary." That freedom came with responsibility, which is why I insisted on specific intellectual property clauses in my employment contract. Most developers sign standard agreements without question, but my experience at Google taught me the importance of protecting innovative work. I spent weeks with employment attorney Helen Rodriguez, crafting language that would safeguard my contributions while allowing TechFlow to benefit from my creativity. "Standard contracts assume all employee-created work belongs to the company," Helen explained during one of our sessions. "But your situation involves proprietary methodologies you developed before joining TechFlow. We need to establish clear boundaries." The negotiation process tested everyone's patience, but Amanda and Jonathan supported my position. They understood that attracting top talent required flexibility, especially when that talent brought unique value. My final contract included paragraph 6, a carefully worded section that would prove crucial years later. Once hired, I threw myself into development with obsessive dedication. My workspace became a command center of multiple monitors, whiteboards covered in algorithmic flowcharts, and towers of technical documentation. I arrived before dawn and stayed past midnight, fueled by coffee and the thrill of creation. FlowMind emerged from this period of intense focus. The algorithm represented a breakthrough in autonomous data processing capable of analyzing massive data sets and identifying patterns that human analysts would miss. Unlike existing software that required constant human oversight, FlowMind could adapt its analysis methods based on data characteristics, essentially learning how to learn. The development process demanded meticulous documentation. Every function, every variable, every decision tree was recorded in detailed specifications. I registered my core algorithms with the U.S. Copyright Office, establishing legal ownership of the foundational code. These precautions felt excessive at the time, but my instincts insisted on comprehensive protection. TechFlow's transformation began immediately after FlowMind's implementation. Our first client, a regional bank struggling with fraud detection, saw their accuracy rates improve by 73% within the first month. Word spread through the financial services industry, and companies began requesting demonstrations. Revenue growth followed quickly. Quarter after quarter sales numbers climbed as more businesses adopted FlowMind for everything from inventory optimization to customer behavior analysis. Within 18 months, TechFlow had grown from a modest 50-person company to over 120 employees across 3 floors. Amanda celebrated each milestone with the entire development team. She understood that success belonged to everyone who contributed, and she made sure credit was distributed fairly. During company meetings, she consistently highlighted my role in creating FlowMind, never allowing my contributions to be minimized or overlooked. Paulette's vision made this possible, Amanda would say during client presentations. Her algorithms don't just process data, they understand it. The technical team functioned like a well-orchestrated symphony under Amanda's leadership. Database administrator Lucy Park optimized FlowMind's storage requirements. QA tester Ryan Stewart developed comprehensive testing protocols, and junior developer Sarah Murphy documented user interfaces. Everyone understood their role in maintaining FlowMind's excellence. Jonathan Walsh's leadership philosophy emphasized collaborative innovation. He trusted his technical team to make complex decisions without micromanagement, and he provided resources necessary for continued development. The company culture encouraged experimentation, learning from failures, and celebrating breakthrough moments. But success attracted attention from outside forces. Industry headhunters began contacting our key personnel, offering lucrative positions at larger corporations. Competitors attempted to reverse engineer FlowMind's capabilities, though my careful architecture made such efforts nearly impossible. The first warning sign appeared during a routine team meeting in late spring. Amanda seemed distracted, checking her phone frequently and avoiding eye contact during technical discussions. Her usual enthusiasm for upcoming projects felt forced, and she delegated responsibilities she typically handled personally. After the meeting, I approached Amanda privately in her office. Family photos covered her desk, and certifications from various programming languages decorated the walls behind her chair. "Everything okay?" I asked, settling into the chair across from her desk. Amanda hesitated before responding, her fingers drumming nervously against her coffee mug. "There are some changes coming that I can't control. You should be prepared." "What kind of changes?" "I can't say much right now, but you've built something valuable here. Make sure you protect your work." Those words haunted me for weeks. Amanda's behavior became increasingly erratic, as she seemed to be preparing for departure while maintaining the pretense of normal operations. She began documenting processes she had never written down before, creating detailed guides for systems she had managed intuitively. The announcement came on a Tuesday morning in June. Amanda gathered the entire development team in the main conference room, her usual smile replaced by professional composure. She thanked everyone for their dedication and announced her resignation to start her own consulting company. "This team has accomplished incredible things," she said, scanning our shocked faces. "Continue building on that foundation, and remember that innovation requires both creativity and protection." Her words carried deeper meaning that I wouldn't fully understand until much later. Amanda had seen the future approaching and tried to prepare us for challenges ahead. Her departure marked the end of an era characterized by collaborative leadership and shared success. The question that loomed over everyone was simple: who would replace Amanda Chen? As Chief Technology Officer, Derek Hamilton arrived on a humid Monday morning in July, carrying himself with the aggressive confidence of someone accustomed to immediate deference. His introduction to the development team felt more like a military briefing than a collaborative welcome. Standing at the front of our conference room, Derek surveyed us with calculating eyes that seemed to evaluate our worth within seconds. "I'm here to modernize this operation," Derek announced without preamble. Previous management was too casual about accountability and performance metrics. That ends today. His resume impressed the executives: 15 years in software development CTO experience at 2 Silicon Valley startups and an MBA from Northwestern. What the resume didn't capture was Derek's authoritarian management philosophy and his tendency to claim credit for other people's innovations. Derek's first week involved individual meetings with every team member. When my turn came, I entered his office expecting a normal getting to know you conversation. Instead, Derek immediately questioned FlowMind's architecture, demanding explanations for design decisions I had made years earlier. This algorithm structure seems unnecessarily complex, Derek said, pointing at printed code samples spread across his desk. Simpler approaches would be more maintainable. The complexity enables adaptive learning capabilities that simpler algorithms can achieve, I explained. FlowMind's effectiveness depends on this architectural foundation. Derek's expression suggested he either didn't understand or didn't care about my explanation. He made notes in a leather portfolio, nodding curtly before moving to his next criticism. Your documentation style doesn't follow standard industry practices. My team will need to rewrite these specifications to meet professional standards. The comment stung because my documentation had always received praise for its thoroughness and clarity. Derek's criticism felt personal rather than technical, as if he were establishing dominance rather than seeking improvement. Derek's team consisted of 2 developers he brought from his previous company. Travis Bennett, the lead developer, possessed the kind of arrogance that comes from limited experience combined with unlimited confidence. During his introduction to our team, Travis made condescending comments about our outdated methodologies and suggested we could learn from his cutting-edge approaches. Sarah Murphy, the junior developer. Derek brought seemed competent, but intimidated by Derek's aggressive management style. She rarely spoke during meetings and always deferred to Derek's opinions, even when he was clearly wrong about technical details. The contrast with Amanda's collaborative leadership became immediately apparent. Where Amanda had encouraged open discussion and creative problem solving, Derek demanded adherence to his predetermined solutions. Team meetings transformed from brainstorming sessions into lecture halls where Derek outlined his expectations and dismissed alternative suggestions. Bradley Morrison, our new CEO, following Jonathan Walsh's promotion to chairman, seemed overwhelmed by Derek's forceful personality. During executive meetings, I occasionally observed Bradley nodded along with Derek's proposals, even when they contradicted established company policies. Jonathan's collaborative leadership style had been replaced by Bradley's tendency to defer to whoever spoke loudest. Derek's impact on company culture became evident within his first month. The relaxed creativity that had fueled FlowMind's development gave way to rigid processes and excessive bureaucracy. Developers who had once collaborated freely now sought permission for routine decisions, afraid of triggering Derek's criticism. Lucy Park approached me privately during a coffee break, her usual cheerful demeanor replaced by concern. "Something's not right about the new management structure," she whispered, glancing around to ensure we weren't overheard. "Derek's been asking strange questions about FlowMind's development history." "What kind of questions, He wanted to know who originally designed the core algorithms and whether there were any external consultants involved. When I told him, "You created everything internally," he seemed disappointed. Ryan Stewart shared similar observations. During his quarterly review, Derek had questioned whether FlowMind's testing protocols were industry standard and suggested that external validation might be necessary. Such questions seemed designed to undermine confidence in our existing work rather than improve it. The most troubling development occurred during my second month under Derek's management. I discovered he had been scheduling private meetings with potential clients presenting FlowMind demonstrations without including me or other original developers. When I asked about these meetings, Derek claimed they were preliminary discussions that didn't require technical expertise. However, Sarah Murphy accidentally revealed the truth during a casual conversation. She mentioned helping Derek prepare presentation materials for a major client meeting where he had described himself as FlowMind's principal architect. The revelation that Derek was claiming credit for my work felt like a physical blow. Confronting Derek directly seemed like the professional approach, so I requested a private meeting to discuss the situation. His response revealed the depth of his deception and arrogance. "The client relationships are my responsibility now," Derek said dismissively. "They don't need to know about previous development personnel. What matters is current leadership and future direction." But I created FlowMind, Clients should understand the software's origins. You contributed to the initial development phase, Derek corrected. I'm responsible for transforming that foundation into a viable commercial product. His revisionist history was breathtaking in its audacity. Derek was systematically erasing my contributions while positioning himself as FlowMind's true creator. The pattern became clear. He intended to claim ownership of my work and marginalize my role in the company's success. Derek's manipulation extended beyond individual conversations. He began rewriting FlowMind's technical documentation, subtly altering language to minimize my contributions and emphasize his improvements. Version control logs showed him making cosmetic changes to my code, then documenting these modifications as significant optimizations and architectural enhancements. The psychological impact of watching someone steal credit for years of my work created a constant state of anger and frustration. Sleep became difficult as I replayed Derek's manipulations, searching for ways to protect my contributions without creating workplace conflict. Meanwhile, Derek's relationship with Bradley Morrison strengthened as he consistently delivered impressive client presentations and promised aggressive revenue growth. Bradley, lacking technical expertise to evaluate Derek's claims, relied entirely on Derek's interpretations of our software capabilities and market potential. During a company-wide meeting in September, Derek announced his vision for TechFlow's future. He described plans to revolutionize our development approach and streamline operations for maximum efficiency. These euphemisms concealed his real intention, removing anyone who knew the truth about FlowMind's origins. Some team members represent our legacy approach, Derek said, his eyes briefly meeting mine. Others embody our innovative future. We'll be making personnel decisions that reflect our commitment to progress. The threat was clear, though disguised as corporate speak. Derek was preparing to eliminate anyone who could challenge his false narrative about FlowMind's development. After the meeting, several colleagues approached me privately to express concern about Derek's direction. Database Administrator Lucy Park, QA Tester Ryan Stewart, and Senior Developer Mike Patterson all questioned Derek's technical competence and worried about the company's future under his leadership. He's making decisions without understanding the systems he's changing, Mike said during an impromptu gathering in the break room. Yesterday, he suggested modifications to FlowMind's core algorithm that would break its adaptive capabilities. But fear prevented anyone from challenging Derek openly. He had established a pattern of retaliation against perceived disloyalty, and nobody wanted to risk their employment during uncertain times. The final confirmation of Derek's intentions came through an overheard conversation in his office. I was working late one evening when I heard Derek speaking loudly during what seemed like a phone call. His office door was partially open, and his words carried clearly down the hallway. The previous development team left behind some decent foundation code, but it needed significant improvements to reach market viability, Derek was saying. My team has transformed their amateur work into a professional product. He was speaking to someone important, probably an investor or potential business partner. Derek was not only stealing credit for my work, but actively disparaging my capabilities to external stakeholders. The conversation continued with Derek describing plans for restructuring development teams and eliminating legacy personnel who no longer fit our progressive vision. He spoke about me and other original team members as obstacles to overcome rather than valuable employees to retain. That night, I realized Derek's campaign against me was entering a new phase. He had spent months undermining my reputation, claiming credit for my work, and building a case for my removal. The next step would be my termination, allowing him complete control over FlowMind's narrative. October brought Derek's systematic campaign to new levels of cruelty and professional sabotage. What had been subtle undermining transformed into overt hostility designed to drive me from the company. Each day brought fresh humiliations as Derek wielded his authority like a weapon against anyone who threatened his fabricated success story. The exclusion from important meetings began immediately after Derek's phone conversation. Projects I had led for years suddenly required senior leadership oversight, meaning Derek and Travis would handle all client communications. When I protested that my absence from these meetings would hurt client relationships, Derek responded with calculated indifference. Clients prefer dealing with current decision makers rather than individual contributors, Derek said during a staff meeting where he announced the new protocol. This change will streamline our communication process and present a more professional image. The PSA individual contributors label was particularly insulting since FlowMind's existence depended entirely on my individual contributions. Derek's language made my role sound menial and replaceable when everyone in the room knew I had created the software that funded all their salaries. Travis Bennett's promotion to senior lead developer represented another calculated insult. Despite having joined the company only 3 months earlier and demonstrating limited understanding of our systems, Travis was suddenly positioned above me in the organizational hierarchy. Derek announced this promotion during a team meeting without prior discussion or explanation. Travis brings fresh perspective and industry best practices to our development process, Derek explained, while Travis smirked beside him. His leadership will help modernize our approach to software architecture. The promotion meeting felt surreal because everyone present understood that Travis knew less about software development than several junior programmers on our team. His previous experience involved maintaining existing systems rather than creating innovative solutions. Yet Derek's authority made this obvious incompetence irrelevant to organizational decisions. My new role involved debugging legacy systems and handling routine maintenance tasks that any recent computer science graduate could manage. Projects that had once challenged my creativity and expertise were replaced with mind-numbing busywork designed to demonstrate my reduced status within the company. Derek's rewriting of FlowMind's documentation accelerated during this period. Version control systems showed him making daily modifications to specifications I had written, systematically removing references to my contributions and inserting language that credited his architectural improvements and Travis's optimization work. The most egregious example involved FlowMind's core learning algorithm, which I had spent 6 months developing and refining. Derek's revised documentation described this algorithm as adapted from industry standard approaches and will enhance it through advanced optimization techniques implemented by the current development team. Reading these falsifications felt like watching someone erase my professional identity in real time. Years of creative work were being attributed to people who could barely understand the concepts involved, let alone improve upon them. Lucy Park documented Derek's manipulations by secretly maintaining backup copies of original documentation. During a private conversation in the parking garage, she showed me printed comparisons between my original specifications and Derek's revised versions. He's completely rewritten the development history, Lucy said, pointing to side-by-side text comparisons. According to these new documents, you barely contributed to FlowMind's creation. How is this legal? I asked, studying the blatant falsifications. It probably isn't, but who's going to challenge him? Bradley trusts Derek completely, and Jonathan is focused on board-level responsibilities now. The isolation extended beyond technical work to social interactions within the company. Colleagues who had once sought my advice on complex problems began avoiding me, afraid that association with Derek's target would hurt their own standing. The collaborative relationships I had built over 3 years evaporated as people protected themselves from Derek's retaliation. Ryan Stewart experienced Derek's vindictiveness firsthand when he made the mistake of defending my contributions during a team meeting. Derek immediately questioned Ryan's competence, suggesting that his testing protocols were outdated and required comprehensive review by qualified personnel. Your loyalty to previous development approaches is hindering progress, Derek told Ryan in front of the entire team. Modern companies require adaptability and forward-thinking collaboration. After that public humiliation, Ryan apologized to me privately, but stopped offering any support during meetings. Derek's intimidation tactics were working perfectly, isolating me from potential allies and creating an atmosphere of fear among the technical staff. The most devastating blow came when Derek announced client presentations featuring FlowMind technology. These demonstrations were scheduled without my involvement despite my deep understanding of the software's capabilities and limitations. When I requested inclusion in these important meetings, Derek's response revealed his complete contempt for my contributions. Client presentations require polished communication skills and comprehensive business perspective, Derek said. Technical details can be addressed separately if clients express specific concerns. The implication was clear. Derek considered me incapable of professional client interaction, despite 3 years of successful customer relationships and positive feedback from every business that had adopted FlowMind. Travis began leading these presentations, with Derek's support describing FlowMind's capabilities using language copied directly from my original documentation. Clients who had worked with me during the software's development were told that personnel changes had improved TechFlow's technical leadership and customer service capabilities. The psychological impact of these manipulations created constant stress that affected every aspect of my life. Sleep became elusive as I replayed Derek's latest insults and planned responses that I knew would only worsen my situation. Concentration at work suffered because emotional energy was consumed by processing Derek's daily humiliations. Derek's campaign intensified further when he implemented performance improvement protocols, specifically targeting my work. Every task I completed required review by Travis, who lacked the expertise to evaluate my code, but used these sessions to demonstrate his supposed authority over my work. Your programming style doesn't conform to current industry standards, Travis would say while reviewing algorithms he couldn't understand. These functions need simplification to meet professional requirements. The irony of receiving criticism from someone whose programming skills were demonstrably inferior created a cognitive dissonance that made me question my own sanity. Travis was critiquing code that had generated millions of dollars in revenue for the company, while his own contributions consisted of minor bug fixes and cosmetic interface changes. Derek documented these performance issues in formal reviews that painted me as resistant to feedback and unwilling to collaborate with new team members. His reports described my failure to adapt to improved development methodologies and inability to accept constructive criticism from qualified colleagues. These fabricated performance problems became the foundation for Derek's planned termination strategy. He was building a paper trail that would justify my removal while protecting the company from potential legal challenges. Employment attorney Helen Rodriguez reviewed Derek's performance evaluations and immediately recognized their purpose. These documents are designed to establish cause for termination, she explained during an emergency consultation. Derek is systematically documenting alleged performance issues to avoid severance obligations and prevent unemployment claims. Can he legally do this? Unfortunately, employment law favors employers in these situations. Derek's evaluations are obviously biased, but proving that bias in court requires extensive documentation and expensive litigation. Helen advised me to begin documenting Derek's behavior while preparing for inevitable termination. Her legal perspective confirmed what my instincts had been telling me. Derek intended to fire me, and the only question was timing. The discovery of Derek's negotiations with DataMax Corporation provided the final piece of his motivational puzzle. Lucy Park overheard Derek discussing licensing opportunities during a conference call with external parties. When she investigated further, she discovered that Derek had been negotiating a $20 million deal to sell FlowMind technology to our biggest competitor. He's planning to cut out everyone who knows the truth about FlowMind's development, Lucy whispered during another parking garage meeting. The DataMax deal gives him enough money to replace the entire technical team with people who believe his version of events. Derek's strategy was brilliant in its ruthlessness. By selling FlowMind to a major corporation while eliminating anyone who could challenge his claims of ownership, he would secure both financial success and professional credibility. The original development team would be dismissed as disgruntled former employees whose allegations could be safely ignored. Understanding Derek's complete plan crystallized my resolve to fight back. He wasn't just stealing credit for my work, he was destroying my professional reputation and financial future while enriching himself through fraud and deception. The question was how to stop him before his plan reached completion. Derek had positioned himself perfectly within the company's power structure, and traditional appeals to management had already failed. Challenging him directly would accelerate my termination without preventing the Data Max deal. But Derek had made one crucial miscalculation in his campaign against me. His arrogance had blinded him to the legal protections I had carefully constructed 3 years earlier. He assumed that corporate politics and executive authority could override intellectual property law. Soon Derek would discover how wrong he was about the balance of power between us. November's chill matched the glacial atmosphere at TechFlow Solutions as Derek's campaign against me reached its crescendo. Armed with evidence of his planned sale to Data Max Corporation, I decided the time had come for a direct confrontation with Bradley Morrison. Surely the CEO would intervene once he understood the magnitude of Derek's deception and its potential consequences for the company. I requested an emergency meeting with Bradley describing the situation as urgent matters affecting company intellectual property and client relationships. His assistant scheduled 30 minutes on a Tuesday afternoon, which felt inadequate for the complex issues I needed to address, but it was better than continued silence. Bradley's corner office reflected his recent promotion, with still unpacked boxes and family photos arranged haphazardly across his desk. He seemed distracted during our conversation, frequently checking his phone and appearing eager to conclude our meeting quickly. "I appreciate your concerns, Paulette," Bradley said after I presented evidence of Derek's credit theft and the secret Data Max negotiations. "But Derek has impressive credentials and innovative vision for our company's future. His results speak for themselves." "Those results are based on technology I created," I emphasized, showing him side-by-side comparisons of original and falsified documentation. "Derek is claiming credit for work he didn't do and planning to sell that work without proper authorization." Bradley studied the documents with obvious discomfort, but his response revealed how completely Derek had poisoned him against me. "Derek mentioned you might raise these allegations. He said you've been struggling to adapt to our new development approaches and spreading false rumors about his leadership." The revelation that Derek had preemptively undermined my credibility was devastating, but not surprising. He had spent months positioning himself as the reasonable authority figure while painting me as a disgruntled employee whose allegations couldn't be trusted. "Have you reviewed my original employment contract?" I asked, hoping to shift the discussion toward legal facts rather than personality conflicts. "Employment contracts are HR matters," Bradley replied dismissively. "My focus is strategic leadership and company growth. Derek's vision aligns perfectly with our expansion goals." Bradley's ignorance about intellectual property issues was exactly what Derek had counted on when planning his deception. By positioning himself as the technical expert, Derek could make claims about software ownership that non-technical executives would accept without investigation. The meeting ended with Bradley promising to look into the situation, while making it clear he considered Derek's leadership more valuable than my technical contributions. His parting comment revealed the depth of Derek's manipulation. "Innovation requires fresh perspectives, Paulette. Sometimes that means embracing change rather than clinging to past approaches." Leaving Bradley's office, I realized that internal appeals were futile. Derek had successfully positioned himself as TechFlow's technical visionary while reducing me to a disruptive obstacle that needed removal. The power dynamics within the company now favored Derek's narrative over factual evidence. Derek's awareness of my meeting with Bradley became apparent the next morning when he implemented his most humiliating strategy yet. He announced a new code review process, requiring me to explain every algorithm and function I had created to Travis Bennett, who would evaluate their compliance with current industry standards. "This review process will ensure all legacy code meets professional requirements," Derek explained during a team meeting where I was the obvious target. "Outdated approaches can undermine system reliability and client confidence." The sessions with Travis represented peak degradation, of my professional status. I was forced to explain complex algorithmic concepts to someone who lacked the mathematical background to understand them, while he used his authority to criticize design decisions he couldn't comprehend. Why did you use recursive functions here instead of iterative loops? Travis would ask about algorithms where recursion was clearly the optimal approach. Recursive implementation enables the adaptive learning capabilities that make FlowMind unique, I would explain patiently. Industry best practices favor simpler solutions. Travis would respond, making notes that portrayed my sophisticated algorithms as unnecessarily complex amateur work. These code review sessions were witnessed by other developers who understood the technical absurdity of Travis critiquing my work. But Derek's intimidation tactics prevented anyone from defending me, and the sessions continued as planned humiliation rather than legitimate technical evaluation. Derek used these fabricated performance issues to build his termination case. His documentation described my resistance to collaborative feedback and inability to accept constructive criticism from qualified team members. Each code review session generated new evidence of my supposed incompetence and unprofessional behavior. The psychological warfare was expertly crafted to break my confidence and justify my removal. Derek understood that technical excellence meant nothing if he could characterize it as stubborn adherence to outdated approaches. His strategy transformed my greatest strengths into perceived weaknesses. During this period, I consulted again with employment attorney Helen Rodriguez, who reviewed Derek's escalating documentation with growing concern. Her legal analysis confirmed my worst fears about the trajectory of events. Derek is building an airtight case for termination with cause, Helen explained during our consultation. His documentation paints a picture of performance decline and workplace disruption that would justify dismissal without severance pay. But his allegations are completely fabricated, I protested. That's true, but proving fabrication requires extensive evidence and expensive litigation. Derek's documentation follows standard corporate protocols for performance improvement, making it difficult to challenge in court. Helen's advice was pragmatic but disheartening. She recommended documenting Derek's behavior while preparing for inevitable termination. Legal remedies existed, but they required time and resources I might not possess after losing my job. The final escalation occurred when Derek announced a mandatory company retreat to unveil exciting new developments and strategic partnerships. The retreat was scheduled for the following week at a resort outside Seattle, with attendance required for all employees. Lucy Park's investigation revealed Derek's true intentions for the retreat. Through careful questioning of administrative staff, she discovered that Derek planned to announce my termination in front of the entire company as an example of accountability and performance standards. He's going to humiliate you publicly before announcing the DataMax deal as his achievement, Lucy warned during another clandestine meeting. The retreat is designed to showcase his leadership while eliminating anyone who could challenge his narrative. The prospect of public humiliation, followed by termination, represented Derek's complete victory over 3 years of my professional accomplishment. He would claim credit for FlowMind's success while destroying my reputation and eliminating my ability to challenge his false claims. But Derek's arrogance had led him to underestimate the legal protections I had carefully constructed when joining TechFlow. His assumption that corporate authority could override intellectual property law was about to be tested in ways he couldn't imagine. The retreat would indeed mark a turning point in our conflict, but not in the direction Derek anticipated. His moment of greatest triumph would become the catalyst for his complete professional destruction. Ryan Stewart approached me privately the day before the retreat, his expression reflecting the general anxiety among employees who sensed that major changes were imminent. Whatever happens tomorrow, know that some of us remember who really built FlowMind, he said quietly. Derek's lies won't survive forever. His words provided small comfort, but they confirmed that Derek's manipulation hadn't fooled everyone. Truth has a way of persisting despite systematic attempts to suppress it, and Derek's fabricated success story contained contradictions that observant people had noticed. The night before the retreat, I prepared for Derek's planned humiliation by reviewing the legal documents that would soon transform our power dynamic. 3 years of careful planning and legal protection were about to prove their worth in ways I had hoped would never be necessary. Derek Hamilton was about to learn that stealing credit for someone else's work carried consequences far beyond his imagination. The Mountain Resorts Conference Center buzzed with nervous energy as 40 TechFlow Solutions employees gathered for Derek's carefully orchestrated presentation. The November morning was crisp and clear with snow-capped peaks visible through floor-to-ceiling windows that surrounded the main meeting room. Derek had chosen this dramatic setting to announce what he believed would be his greatest professional triumph. I sat in the back row, watching Derek command the stage with his characteristic arrogance. He wore an expensive charcoal suit and projected confidence as he outlined his revolutionary restructuring plan that would position TechFlow for unprecedented growth and market leadership. Today marks a new chapter in our company's evolution, Derek announced to the assembled staff. We're moving beyond outdated development approaches toward innovative methodologies that reflect current industry standards. His presentation included elaborate slides detailing organizational changes that eliminated my position while creating new roles for his preferred team members. The language was carefully crafted to make these personnel decisions seem like natural business evolution rather than personal vendetta. Some positions represent our legacy approach to software development, Derek continued, his eyes briefly meeting mine across the room. Others embody our innovative future. Today's announcements reflect our commitment to progress and professional excellence. The restructuring plan was a masterpiece of corporate manipulation. Derek had created new job titles and responsibilities that excluded anyone who knew the truth about FlowMind's development while promoting people who supported his false narrative. Travis Bennett was elevated to senior lead developer with expanded responsibilities for strategic client relationships and advanced algorithm development. Sarah Murphy received promotion to lead developer despite her limited experience and obvious intimidation by Derek's management style. Meanwhile, my role was classified as redundant due to evolving technical requirements and misalignment with current development priorities. Derek's presentation made my termination sound like an inevitable consequence of industry changes rather than deliberate professional sabotage. The DataMax Corporation deal was announced as Derek's crowning achievement. He described months of complex negotiations that had resulted in a $20 million licensing agreement for FlowMind technology. According to Derek's version of events, this deal represented validation of his technical vision and leadership capabilities. This partnership demonstrates the market value of our innovative approach to artificial intelligence, Derek proclaimed, displaying slides that showed projected revenue growth and expansion opportunities. DataMax Corporation recognized the superior quality of our development work and the potential for continued collaboration. His description of FlowMind's capabilities relied heavily on language copied directly from my original documentation, though he presented these technical specifications as his own insights and innovations. The audience, composed primarily of non-technical employees, couldn't recognize the plagiarism involved in Derek's presentation. Bradley Morrison beamed with pride as Derek outlined the financial benefits of the DataMax deal. The CEO clearly believed Derek had delivered exactly the kind of business success that justified his controversial leadership style and personnel decisions. When Derek invited questions from the audience, several employees asked about the departure of valued colleagues and the impact of organizational changes on company culture. Derek deflected these concerns with practiced corporate speak about necessary evolution and strategic alignment. Change is never easy, Derek acknowledged with false sympathy. But successful companies must prioritize results over comfort. Today's decisions position us for sustained growth and market leadership. The morning session concluded with Derek's announcement that individual termination meetings would occur after lunch. This timing was calculated to maximize anxiety among targeted employees while allowing Derek to enjoy his moment of apparent victory. During the lunch break, colleagues approached me with expressions of sympathy and confusion. Most understood that something was fundamentally wrong with Derek's narrative, but few possessed enough technical knowledge to identify specific problems with his claims. Lucy Park managed to speak with me privately during lunch, her expression reflecting the general sense of unease among longtime employees. This feels like a hostile takeover rather than normal business evolution, she whispered while we stood near the resort's scenic overlook. Derek's been planning this for months, I replied, watching other employees form small discussion groups around the outdoor dining area. Everything we're seeing today was choreographed to support his version of company history. What are you going to do? Derek's about to discover that corporate politics can't override intellectual property law, I said, patting the briefcase that contained documents Derek hadn't imagined existed. The afternoon termination session took place in a smaller conference room, with the windows overlooking a frozen lake. Derek sat across from me at a polished wooden table flanked by Bradley Morrison and HR Director Janet Williams. The setting was designed to intimidate with Derek, positioned as the authority figure delivering judgment on my professional future. Derek began the meeting by reviewing my performance decline over recent months, reading from documentation that painted me as resistant to feedback and unable to adapt to improved development methodologies. His tone was coldly professional as he detailed alleged problems with my work quality and collaborative skills. Your employment with TechFlow Solutions is terminated effective immediately, Derek announced, sliding termination paperwork across the table with obvious satisfaction. All company property must be returned, and your access credentials have already been deactivated. The termination letter cited performance issues and failure to meet evolving technical requirements as justification for my dismissal. Derek had crafted language that avoided severance obligations while protecting the company from potential legal challenges. All intellectual property developed during your employment belongs entirely to TechFlow Solutions. Derek continued, his voice taking on a mocking quality as he approached the moment he had planned for months. Any attempt to claim ownership of company software or algorithms would constitute theft of corporate assets. Bradley Morrison sat silently throughout this recitation, occasionally nodding, but avoiding direct eye contact. His discomfort was obvious, but Derek's authority over technical matters had convinced him that my termination was both necessary and justified. Derek's arrogance reached its peak as he delivered his final insult. "We own your code, sweetheart." He laughed, clearly savoring what he believed was his complete victory over 3 years of my professional accomplishment. "You'll need to find more suitable employment elsewhere, probably at a company that appreciates your limited skill set." The sweetheart comment was particularly calculated, designed to emphasize his perceived dominance while belittling my professional capabilities. Derek's expression radiated satisfaction as he watched for signs of defeat or humiliation. Instead, I reached into my briefcase and placed a manila folder on the table between us. The folder contained documents that would transform Derek's moment of triumph into the beginning of his professional destruction. "Actually read paragraph 6, I said calmly, opening the folder to reveal pages of legal documentation that Derek had never imagined existed. Derek's confident smile faltered as he began reading the employment contract provisions I had negotiated 3 years earlier. His face gradually drained of color as he absorbed the implications of language that protected my intellectual property rights in ways he had never considered possible. "What is this?" Derek asked, his voice betraying the first signs of uncertainty he had shown since joining TechFlow. "My original employment contract," I replied evenly. "Specifically, the intellectual property clauses that define ownership of software algorithms developed using my proprietary methodologies." Derek continued reading, his expression shifting from confusion to dawning horror as he realized the magnitude of his miscalculation. Paragraph 6 contained language that would destroy everything he had built his career plans around. He slowly turned to Bradley Morrison, his voice barely above a whisper. "Sir, she doesn't work here anymore, but..." The sentence hung unfinished as Derek grappled with legal realities that would soon topple his carefully constructed empire of deception and fraud. Derek's hands trembled as he read paragraph 6 of my original employment contract, the document that would unravel 3 months of his carefully orchestrated deception. The conference room fell silent, except for the quiet rustle of pages as he absorbed the devastating implications of language I had negotiated years before his arrival at TechFlow Solutions. Paragraph 6 stated in clear, unambiguous terms that any software algorithms developed using my proprietary base architecture methodologies would remain my intellectual property with TechFlow Solutions, receiving only a license to use them during my active employment. The contract specified that termination of employment would automatically revoke this license unless both parties agreed otherwise in writing to continued usage terms. This can't be legally binding, Derek said weakly, his earlier confidence evaporating as he reread the contract provisions. Employment agreements assign all work products to the company. Standard agreements do, I confirmed calmly. But my contract included specific protections for proprietary methodologies I developed before joining TechFlow. Those methodologies form the foundation of FlowMind's core algorithms. The folder contained additional documents that solidified my legal position beyond any possible challenge. Copyright certificates from the U.S. Copyright Office showed that I had registered my foundational algorithms 6 months before joining TechFlow Solutions, establishing clear legal ownership of the intellectual property that enabled FlowMind's functionality. Derek studied the copyright documentation with growing desperation, searching for loopholes or technicalities that might preserve his crumbling position. The certificates were comprehensive and professionally prepared, covering every aspect of the algorithmic framework that made FlowMind's adaptive learning capabilities possible. You can't prove that FlowMind uses your copyrighted algorithms, Derek said, grasping for any argument that might salvage his situation. Page 12 contains a detailed technical analysis comparing FlowMind's source code with my registered algorithms, I replied, watching Derek's face as he found the documentation that demolished his last hope. The comparison shows exact matches in 47 core functions and substantial similarity in the overall architectural approach. The technical analysis had been prepared by software forensics expert Dr. Patricia Coleman, whose credentials were impeccable and whose findings would withstand scrutiny in any legal proceeding. Her report concluded that FlowMind could not function without the copyrighted algorithms I had developed independently and licensed to TechFlow. Bradley Morrison finally broke his stunned silence. What does this mean for the Datamax deal? Without my license, TechFlow cannot legally sell, modify, or even continue using FlowMind, I explained matter-of-factly. Any attempt to transfer technology rights to Datamax Corporation would constitute copyright infringement on a massive scale. The implications crashed over Derek like a tidal wave of professional destruction. His $20 million triumph had transformed into a potential lawsuit that could bankrupt TechFlow Solutions and destroy his career in software development. The licensing deal he had negotiated was worthless without my permission to transfer intellectual property rights. The copyright infringement damages alone would exceed $50 million. I continued, allowing Derek to absorb the full magnitude of his miscalculation. Datamax Corporation has deep pockets and aggressive legal representation. They don't tolerate business partners who misrepresent ownership of licensed technology. Derek's breathing became labored as he contemplated the legal and financial catastrophe his arrogance had created. The folder contained communications with intellectual property attorneys who had confirmed every aspect of my legal position and prepared comprehensive strategies for protecting my rights through litigation if necessary. This is extortion, Derek said, desperately searching for any way to characterize my legal protections as improper behavior. This is intellectual property law, I corrected. I took reasonable precautions to protect work I developed independently, and those precautions included licensing terms that you chose to ignore when planning my termination. Bradley Morrison's face reflected growing panic as he understood the potential consequences of Derek's deception. The CEO had approved a licensing deal based on Derek's false claims of ownership, exposing the company to massive legal liability and potential bankruptcy. What do you want? Bradley asked, his voice barely controlled. The question hung in the air as Derek's world collapsed around him. Everything he had built his reputation on was crumbling, and the woman he had mocked and humiliated held the power to destroy him completely. I want Derek's immediate termination for misrepresentation of intellectual property ownership, I said calmly. I want reinstatement as Chief Technology Officer with equity participation reflecting my actual contributions to company success. I want public acknowledgement of my role in creating FlowMind, and I want a formal apology from the board of directors for allowing this situation to develop. Derek's face cycled through expressions of rage, desperation, and defeat as he realized the completeness of his professional destruction. The termination meeting he had orchestrated to humiliate me had become the venue for his own career suicide. And Derek, I added, looking directly into his panicked eyes, I want every piece of falsified documentation removed from company records with accurate attribution restored to all technical specifications and client communications. The silence stretched for long moments as Derek contemplated his limited options. He could agree to my terms and salvage some dignity from his catastrophic miscalculation, or he could fight and face complete professional annihilation through prolonged litigation. This contract might not hold up in court, Derek said weakly, making one final attempt to preserve his position through legal intimidation. Are you willing to bet your career on that possibility? I asked. Because DataMax Corporation's legal team is already reviewing the licensing agreement you negotiated. When they discover you misrepresented intellectual property ownership, they'll sue both you personally and TechFlow for fraud and breach of contract. Derek's face went completely white as he absorbed this new information. He had been so focused on defeating me that he hadn't considered the broader implications of his deception. DataMax Corporation had the resources and motivation to pursue devastating legal action against anyone who had cost them $20 million through fraudulent representation. HR Director Janet Williams finally spoke, her voice reflecting the legal expertise that Derek had ignored in his rush to claim credit for my work. Derek, intellectual property disputes are extremely serious matters. If Paulette's claims are valid, continuing this termination could expose the company to massive liability. The moment of truth had arrived for Derek Hamilton. His carefully constructed empire of lies and stolen credit was collapsing under the weight of legal reality, and everyone in the room understood that his arrogance had created an existential threat to TechFlow Solutions. Derek's next words would determine whether he accepted defeat gracefully or escalated the conflict into a legal battle he could never win. Either way, his reign of deception and manipulation was ending, and my 3 years of careful legal preparation were about to be vindicated. But Derek's arrogance ran deeper than rational self-interest, and his response to devastating legal evidence would reveal the true extent of his delusion and professional incompetence. I'll fight this in court, Derek snarled, his voice filled with desperate rage. Your contract is invalid, and I won't be destroyed by a disgruntled employee's legal threats. His declaration of war against copyright law and intellectual property rights would soon prove to be the final mistake in a career built on deception and theft. Derek's defiant declaration to fight my copyright claims in court lasted exactly 18 hours before reality crushed his remaining delusions. By the next morning, TechFlow's corporate attorneys had reviewed my intellectual property documentation and delivered their unequivocal assessment to Derek and Bradley Morrison. My legal position was absolutely bulletproof, and any litigation would result in catastrophic defeat for the company. Senior partner Robert Chen, from the law firm of Martinez Chen and Associates, called an emergency meeting that Wednesday morning. His 20 years of intellectual property experience had equipped him to recognize hopeless cases, and Derek's situation qualified as perhaps the most clear-cut example of copyright infringement he had ever encountered. Mr. Hamilton's position is legally untenable, Robert explained to the assembled executives. Miss Paulette's copyright registrations predate her employment. Her contract explicitly protects her intellectual property rights, and technical analysis proves Flowmind's dependence on her copyrighted algorithms. Any court in America would rule against TechFlow within minutes. Derek sat silently during this legal education, his face reflecting the gradual destruction of every assumption that had guided his behavior since joining the company. His belief that corporate authority could override intellectual property law was being systematically dismantled by someone who understood the legal system's actual requirements. What about our licensing agreement with DataMax Corporation? Bradley asked, his voice betraying the panic that had consumed him since learning about Derek's misrepresentation. The agreement is void, Robert replied bluntly. You cannot license technology you don't own. DataMax's legal department reached the same conclusion yesterday afternoon and has already initiated proceedings to recover their $20 million payment. The DataMax situation had deteriorated even faster than Derek's employment prospects. Their corporate attorneys had reviewed the licensing agreement and immediately identified the intellectual property problems that Derek's arrogance had prevented him from considering. DataMax Corporation's reputation for aggressive litigation meant that TechFlow faced not only contract cancellation, but also potential fraud charges. DataMax is demanding immediate refund of their licensing fee, plus punitive damages for misrepresentation, Robert continued. They're also threatening criminal fraud charges against individuals responsible for the deception. Derek's face went completely white as he absorbed the implications of criminal liability. His campaign to steal credit for my work had evolved from employment misconduct into potential felony charges that could result in prison time and permanent destruction of his professional reputation. The legal meeting concluded with Robert's recommendation that TechFlow immediately accept my terms for resolving the intellectual property dispute. Any delay would worsen the company's legal exposure while giving DataMax additional grounds for punitive action. Ms. Paulette's demands are remarkably reasonable, considering the magnitude of copyright infringement involved, Robert observed. Accepting her terms is the only way to avoid bankruptcy proceedings and criminal investigations. Bradley Morrison's transformation from Derek's supporter to desperate advocate for settlement happened with breathtaking speed. The CEO, who had dismissed my allegations 24 hours earlier, was now begging me to save his company from the consequences of Derek's deception. Paulette, I sincerely apologize for not investigating your concerns more thoroughly, Bradley said during our settlement negotiation meeting. Derek's misrepresentation put the entire company at risk, and your legal protections are the only thing preventing complete disaster. The apology felt hollow after months of Derek's systematic abuse, but Bradley's desperation was genuine. He finally understood that his deference to Derek's supposed technical expertise had nearly destroyed everything TechFlow Solutions had built over the past 5 years. Derek's termination was announced that same afternoon in a company-wide meeting that bore no resemblance to his triumphant presentation 2 days earlier. Bradley Morrison stood before the assembled employees and delivered a carefully worded explanation of leadership changes necessitated by intellectual property concerns and strategic realignment. The announcement avoided specific details about Derek's misconduct while making it clear that his employment had ended immediately and permanently. His access to all company systems was revoked, his corporate credit cards were canceled, and security personnel escorted him from the building with only personal items in a cardboard box. Travis Bennett and Sarah Murphy's reactions to Derek's downfall revealed the extent to which they had been manipulated by his false promises and fabricated success stories. Travis's arrogance evaporated when he realized his promotion had been based on Derek's lies, while Sarah expressed relief that the intimidating management style that had terrorized her was finally ending. I never understood the technical work Derek claimed to be doing, Sarah admitted during a private conversation after Derek's departure. I just tried to stay quiet and avoid making him angry. Travis's apology was more extensive and emotionally complex. His condescending attitude toward my work had been genuine, but it was founded on Derek's systematic deception about technical competence and company history. Derek convinced me that you were resistant to modern development approaches, Travis said, his embarrassment obvious as he struggled with the revelation of his manipulation. I believed his version of events because he seemed so confident about technical matters. Accepting these apologies required considerable emotional effort, but Derek's reign of deception had harmed everyone at TechFlow Solutions, not just me. Travis and Sarah had been pawns in Derek's campaign rather than willing collaborators, and their recognition of the truth represented an opportunity for healing workplace relationships. My reinstatement as Chief Technology Officer was announced the following week, along with an equity stake that reflected my actual contribution to the company's success. The board of directors issued a formal statement acknowledging my role in creating FlowMind and expressing regret for the misunderstandings that had led to inappropriate personnel decisions. The statement was diplomatically worded to avoid admitting legal liability while satisfying my requirement for public vindication. More importantly, it sent a clear message to employees and clients that TechFlow Solutions was returning to the collaborative leadership philosophy that had created its original success. Restoring Flow Mind's accurate technical documentation required several weeks of a painstaking work to remove Derek's falsifications and restore proper attribution for all development work. The process revealed the stunning extent of his systematic deception and the comprehensive nature of his attempt to erase my contributions. Lucy Park and Ryan Stewart eagerly participated in this restoration project, having maintained backup copies of original documentation throughout Derek's tenure. Their loyalty during those difficult months had protected crucial evidence that simplified the process of correcting Derek's falsifications. We knew Derek's claims didn't make sense, Lucy explained, while we worked through corrupted version control logs. Your coding style is distinctive, and anyone with technical knowledge could see that Derek's modifications were superficial at best. The DataMax Corporation situation required delicate negotiation to prevent ongoing legal action against TechFlow Solutions. I agreed to honor the original licensing agreement under modified terms that acknowledged my intellectual property rights and included ongoing royalty payments for my copyrighted algorithms. This resolution satisfied DataMax's business objectives while providing TechFlow with sustainable revenue from FlowMind technology. The modified agreement also established precedent for future licensing deals that properly respected intellectual property ownership and provided appropriate compensation for innovative work. 6 months after Derek's termination, TechFlow Solutions had not only recovered from his destructive leadership, but had achieved new levels of success under restored collaborative management. Employee morale improved dramatically once the atmosphere of fear and intimidation was replaced by open communication and shared recognition for contributions. Flow Mind's continued development under my leadership resulted in significant enhancements that attracted additional clients and expanded market opportunities. The algorithm's adaptive learning capabilities proved even more powerful when developed by someone who understood its foundational architecture rather than someone attempting to claim credit for work they couldn't comprehend. The experience taught me invaluable lessons about protecting intellectual property and recognizing the signs of systematic workplace manipulation. Derek's campaign had been devastating while it was happening, but my preparation and legal protections ultimately transformed his attempt at career destruction into confirmation of my professional value and technical expertise. More importantly, the resolution demonstrated that justice, though sometimes delayed, prevails when people stand up for their principles and protect their work through proper legal channels. Derek's arrogance and sense of entitlement had blinded him to the reality that intellectual property law exists precisely to prevent the kind of theft he had attempted. The final irony was that Derek's effort to steal credit for my innovations had actually increased their value and market recognition. His failed deception brought attention to FlowMind's capabilities, and my role in creating them, resulting in new business opportunities and professional recognition that might not have occurred otherwise. As I reflected on this challenging period in my career, I realized that Derek Hamilton had inadvertently provided me with the greatest professional validation possible. His desperate attempt to claim my work as his own proved beyond doubt that what I had created was truly valuable and worth protecting. The lesson for anyone facing similar workplace manipulation is clear: document your contributions, protect your intellectual property, And never allow bullies to intimidate you into abandoning what rightfully belongs to you. Knowledge, preparation, and legal protection are more powerful than office politics, and justice ultimately prevails when we advocate for ourselves professionally and ethically. Have you ever had to stand up to someone who tried to take credit for your work or undermine your professional contributions? I'd love to hear about your experiences in the comments below. How did you handle the situation, and what advice would you give to others facing similar challenges? If this story resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe for more stories about workplace courage and professional justice. Share this video with anyone who might benefit from hearing about the importance of protecting intellectual property and standing up to workplace bullies. Your engagement helps these important stories reach people who need to hear them. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that your work and contributions have value that deserves protection and recognition. Never let anyone make you feel otherwise, and always be prepared to fight for what rightfully belongs to you.